Imagine a man, disowned by his own king, his reputation in tatters. He possesses a secret, a map whispered to be a lie, promising a westward passage to the fabled Spice Islands, a route no one believed existed. This man, Ferdinand Magellan, stands before the young King of Spain, a rival empire, with a proposal so audacious it borders on madness. He doesn't just want to find a new trade route. He wants to do the impossible. Sail west to reach the east, to circumnavigate the entire globe. The Spanish court is skeptical. His own countrymen call him a traitor. The ships he's given are old, barely seaworthy, and his crew is a volatile mix of Spanish officers who despise their Portuguese captain and sailors scraped from the darkest corners of Seville's taverns. 5 ships, 270 men, set sail into the vast unknown Atlantic. They are not just explorers, they are gamblers, betting their lives on the vision of one stubborn, driven man. What follows is not just a voyage, but an epic of betrayal, starvation, mutiny, and discovery that will forever redraw the map of the world. This is the story of the man who masterminded the single greatest journey in the age of exploration. The Spanish court is all skepticism, and his own people label him a traitor. The ships he's given? Old and barely floating. And his crew? A chaotic bunch of Spanish officers who can't stand their Portuguese captain and sailors, pulled from the seediest bars in Seville. 5 ships, 270 men, set off into the vast, unknown Atlantic. They're not just explorers, they're risk-takers, betting their lives on the dreams of one determined man. What unfolds isn't just a journey, it's a saga of betrayal, hunger, mutiny, and incredible discoveries that will change the world map forever. This is the tale of the man behind the greatest adventure of the age of exploration. Born around 1480 into a minor noble family in Portugal, Ferdinand Magellan was a page at the royal court from a young age. He was steeped in the glories of Portuguese exploration. He heard firsthand the tales of Vasco da Gama rounding Africa to reach India, and he dreamed of his own glory. As a young man, he cut his teeth as a soldier in Portugal's expanding empire in the east, fighting in India, Malacca, and what is now Malaysia. He was battle-hardened, disciplined, and fiercely ambitious. It was during his time in the East that he became obsessed with the Spice Islands, the Moluccas, the source of nutmeg and cloves worth more than their weight in gold. He believed, based on fragmented maps and a good deal of conjecture, that there had to be a westward passage, a strait through the newly discovered American continent. But Magellan's ambition clashed with his king. King Manuel the Reign of Portugal repeatedly rejected his proposals, unimpressed and suspicious of Magellan's relentless drive. Wounded in battle and denied a promotion, a frustrated Magellan made a fateful decision. He would renounce his Portuguese citizenship and offer his grand plan to Portugal's greatest rival, Spain. It was an act of treason in the eyes of his homeland, but for Magellan, it was the only path to his destiny. In 1517, he arrived in Seville, a man with a singular, all-consuming vision. He found a patron in the young King Charles III of Spain, who was eager to break the Portuguese monopoly on the spice trade. With the king's backing, Magellan assembled his fleet, the Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, and Santiago. They were not glorious galleons but creaking, patched-up vessels. His crew was a powder keg. The Spanish captains resented taking orders from a Portuguese renegade, and suspicion and animosity simmered just below the surface from the very beginning. On September 20th, 1519, the Armada de Molucca sailed from Spain. The first leg of the journey across the Atlantic was deceptively calm, but the tension aboard the ships was unbearable. As they sailed down the coast of South America, the promised strait failed to appear. Weeks turned into months. The weather grew colder, the rations scarcer. The Spanish captains, led by Juan de Cartagena, saw their chance. They confronted Magellan, accusing him of leading them on a fool's errand. Magellan's response was swift and brutal. He declared a mutiny, and in a tense standoff, his loyal men regained control. Some of the mutineers were executed, others were marooned on the desolate coast of Patagonia. Magellan had asserted his authority, but at a terrible cost. The fleet was fractured, and fear now governed the men. They spent a harrowing winter in a bay they named Port St. Julian. Morale was at rock bottom. They endured freezing temperatures, dwindling supplies, and the constant threat of attack from the native peoples they encountered, whom they described as giants. It was here that one of his ships, the Santiago, was wrecked while scouting ahead, a grim omen of what was to come. Finally, in the spring of 1520, they pressed on, and then, on October 21st, they found it. A narrow, treacherous waterway winding through the tip of the continent. For 38 agonizing days, they navigated the labyrinthine passage, battling ferocious winds and unpredictable currents. The sheer cliffs seemed to close in on them. During this perilous transit, the San Antonio, the largest ship carrying a huge portion of their supplies, secretly deserted, turning back to Spain to spread lies about Magellan's failure. Unaware of this betrayal, Magellan emerged from the strait with his 3 remaining ships into a vast, calm body of water. It was so peaceful compared to the Atlantic that he named it the Mar Pacifico, the Pacific Ocean. They had found the passage, but their ordeal was far from over. They had unknowingly entered the largest body of water on Earth. Magellan had grossly underestimated its size. For 99 days they sailed across an endless blue expanse with no sign of land. The ship's biscuits turned to powder infested with worms, the water became putrid, and the men were forced to eat rats, sawdust, and the leather chafing guards from the ship's rigging to survive. Scurvy, the dreaded disease of sailors, ravaged the crew. Their gums swelled, their teeth fell out, and their bodies were covered in painful sores. Men died daily. Their bodies unceremoniously dropped into the vast, indifferent ocean. The chronicler, Antonio Pigafetta, wrote, "We ate biscuit, but in truth it was no longer biscuit but a powder full of worms. It stank strongly of rat's urine, and we drank water that was yellow and stinking. We also ate the ox hides." Just as all hope seemed lost, they finally sighted land, the island of Guam. Their relief was short-lived. After a tense encounter with the local Chamorro people, whom they accused of theft, they restocked what they could and sailed on, eventually reaching the islands that would one day be named the Philippines. Here, Magellan found a world of intricate kingdoms and complex politics. Using an enslaved man from Malacca, named Enrique, as his interpreter, Magellan began to forge alliances. He converted a local ruler, Raja Humabon of Cebu, and hundreds of his subjects to Christianity. Magellan believed he was succeeding not just as an explorer, but as an agent of the Spanish crown and the Christian faith. But this success bred overconfidence. He promised his new ally, Humabon, that he would subdue a rival chieftain, Lapu-Lapu, on the nearby island of Mactan. It was a fatal miscalculation. On April 27, 1521, Magellan led a small force of around 60 men to Mactan, convinced his European armor and weapons would easily overwhelm the natives. He was tragically wrong. Lapu-Lapu and his warriors numbered over 1,000. They knew the terrain, fighting in the shallows where the Spanish ship's cannons couldn't provide cover. The Spaniards were swarmed. According to Pigafetta's dramatic account, Magellan fought bravely, but was wounded by a bamboo spear. He fell face down in the surf, and the warriors of Mactan descended upon him. The man who had crossed the world's biggest ocean, survived mutiny and starvation, died in a skirmish on a remote beach, thousands of miles from home. He never completed his circumnavigation. With Magellan dead, the expedition fell into chaos. The once friendly Cebuanos turned on them, massacring more of the crew. Now desperately short on men, they were forced to abandon and burn another ship, the Concepcion. Only 2 ships remained, the Trinidad and the Victoria. Under the command of Juan Sebastian Elcano, they finally reached their original goal, the Spice Islands. They loaded their holds with precious cloves, the scent of victory finally in the air. But how to get home? The Trinidad attempted to sail back across the Pacific, a disastrous effort that ended with its capture by the Portuguese. The Victoria, commanded by Elcano, would take the final desperate gamble, a race back to Spain by continuing west, sailing through Portuguese-controlled waters, constantly hiding from their enemies. It was a final, grueling leg of the journey. More men died of starvation. The ship was leaking, but they pushed on. On September 6, 1522, almost 3 years to the day after they had departed, a single battered ship, the Victoria, limped into the harbor of Seville. On board were just 18 starving, ghost-like men out of the original 270. They were the first humans to have ever circled the globe. Their leader, Ferdinand Magellan, was dead, his name maligned by the mutineers who had returned early. But the Victoria's hold was filled with 26 tons of cloves, a cargo so valuable it more than paid for the entire expedition. And more importantly, they carried undeniable proof. The world was indeed round, and humanity's understanding of its own planet was changed forever. Magellan didn't live to see it, but his audacious, impossible dream was realized by the handful of survivors who carried his legacy home. His journey remains one of history's greatest tales of ambition, endurance, and the unyielding power of the human spirit to push beyond the known horizon. Thank you for joining us on this incredible voyage. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into history. We'll see you next time.